I never thought a plastic plate could be a weapon until my mother-in-law, Linda, turned it into one. Looking back, I should have known something was off when she insisted on hosting Thanksgiving this year. In our 5 years of marriage, Linda had never voluntarily invited me into her home, much less offered to cook for me. Maybe she's finally warming up to you, my husband, Michael, suggested when the invitation came. His optimism would have been endearing if it hadn't been so misplaced. I'd spent enough time around Linda Matthews to know that nothing she did was without careful calculation. But I agreed to go, partly because Michael's hopeful expression made it impossible to say no, and partly because I was tired of being the difficult daughter-in-law who caused drama by declining family gatherings. So here we were, pulling up to the sprawling Victorian house that had been in the Matthews family for 3 generations. "Remember," Michael said, squeezing my hand as we walked up the path, "Mom's trying. Let's just have a nice, peaceful Thanksgiving." I nodded, clutching the bourbon pecan pie I'd spent hours perfecting. If Linda wanted peace, I could play nice. The house was already full when we arrived. Michael's sister Emma and her husband were there with their 3 kids, his brother Tom had brought his new girlfriend, and Linda had invited her sister Carol, my least favorite aunt-in-law, who never missed an opportunity to ask when we were finally going to give Linda some grandbabies. "Michael, sweetheart." Linda rushed forward to embrace her son, completely ignoring my presence. She was wearing an elaborate autumn-themed sweater and her signature pearl necklace. The one she never failed to mention was a family heirloom that would look lovely on a daughter-in-law who had blessed the family with children. "Sarah," she finally acknowledged me with a thin smile, eyeing the pie in my hands. "Oh, he brought dessert. How thoughtful. I'll just put this in the kitchen with the real pies." She practically snatched it from my hands before disappearing through the swinging door. I took a deep breath and reminded myself I was doing this for Michael. He'd already moved into the living room, swept up in conversation with his siblings. I stood awkwardly at the periphery, watching the family interact with the familiar feeling of being an outsider looking in. "Sarah," Carol's voice cut through my thoughts. "Still no baby bump, I see. You know, my neighbor's daughter tried this wonderful fertility tea." Actually, I cut her off as politely as I could. "I think I'll go help Linda in the kitchen." It was a testament to how uncomfortable Carol made me that I voluntarily chose Linda's company over hers. The kitchen was Linda's domain, and she made that clear the moment I walked in. "Oh, I have everything under control here," she said, barely glancing up from the turkey she was basting. "Why don't you go set the table? The plates are all laid out." It seemed like a safe enough task, so I went to the dining room, where Linda had indeed set everything up. That's when I saw it. At every place setting was one of her prized Royal Doulton plates, except for mine. At my usual spot, at the far end of the table, naturally, sat a pink plastic children's plate with cartoon characters around the border. I stood there, staring at that plate, feeling my cheeks burn. In the 5 years I'd been married to Michael, Linda had pulled countless passive-aggressive stunts, but this was a new low. "Oh good, you found your plate." Linda's voice dripped with false sweetness as she entered the dining room. "I thought it was appropriate since you seem to have the maturity of a child when it comes to starting a family." The room suddenly felt very small. Through the doorway, I could see the rest of the family gathering in the living room. Michael laughing at something his brother had said. None of them had any idea what was happening in here. "Linda," I kept my voice steady, "I think you know perfectly well why Michael and I don't have children yet." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh yes, your excuses about waiting for the right time and focusing on your careers. Meanwhile, my poor son gets older, watching his siblings give me beautiful grandchildren while his wife selfishly." "Stop." My voice was quiet but firm. "You don't know anything about our situation." "I know my son would make a wonderful father," she snapped, dropping the sugary facade. "I know he comes from fertile stock. Look at his siblings. So the problem must be you. Too career-focused, too selfish, too broken to give him children." Each word hit like a physical blow, but I refused to let her see me cry. Instead, I reached for my purse, my fingers closing around the envelope I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. "You're right about one thing, Linda," I said, pulling out the envelope. "There is a medical reason why Michael and I don't have children yet. Would you like to know what it is?" Her eyes narrowed, fixed on the envelope in my hands. Before she could respond, Michael's voice rang out from the living room. "Mom, is dinner ready?" We're starving out here. Linda's face shifted back into its hostess mask. Coming, darling. Sarah was just admiring her special plate. She turned back to me, voice low. Put that envelope away and act like an adult for once. It's Thanksgiving, and I won't have you ruining it with your dramatics. As she swept out of the dining room, I stood there holding the envelope, my hands shaking slightly. She was right about one thing. It was Thanksgiving. And I had a lot to be thankful for, including the contents of this envelope that would finally put an end to her cruel assumptions. I heard the family moving toward the dining room and took a deep breath. Linda was about to learn that sometimes karma comes in the form of medical test results, served ice cold on Thanksgiving Day. The family filed into the dining room, conversations buzzing about football games and Black Friday sales. Michael took his seat beside me, finally noticing the pink plastic plate in front of me, his brow furrowed in confusion. But before he could say anything, Linda swept in carrying the turkey like it was the crown jewels. Everyone, take your seats, she announced cheerfully. I hope you're all hungry. I outdid myself this year. The reactions to my plate were exactly what Linda had hoped for. Emma's kids pointed and giggled. Carol raised her eyebrows and smirked. Tom's girlfriend looked confused but stayed silent, still too new to wade into family drama. Mom, Michael started, his voice tight with embarrassment. What's with Sarah's plate? Linda's smile was pure poisoned honey. Oh, I just thought, since Sarah's not ready for adult responsibilities like starting a family, she might be more comfortable with something more age-appropriate. The table fell silent. Even the children seemed to sense the tension crackling in the air. Michael's face reddened, but years of conditioning to never challenge his mother kept him quiet. I watched his internal struggle, remembering all the times he promised to stand up to her next time. Actually, Linda, I said, my voice surprisingly calm as I pulled out the envelope. I think it's time we cleared something up about why you don't have grandchildren from Michael yet. Sarah, Michael whispered, placing his hand on my arm. Maybe this isn't the time. No, Michael, I kept my eyes fixed on Linda. Your mother has been blaming me, humiliating me, and making assumptions about our private medical issues for years. I think Thanksgiving is the perfect time to share what we're thankful for, like finally having answers. Linda's hands tightened around the turkey platter. I don't think anyone wants to hear about your excuses during dinner. They're not excuses, I said, opening the envelope slowly, deliberately. They're medical test results from your son's fertility specialist. The turkey platter slipped slightly in Linda's grip. For the first time, I saw real fear flash across her face. Michael, she turned to her son, her voice trembling slightly. Are you going to let her do this? Air our family's private business at Thanksgiving dinner? Michael looked between us, years of maternal manipulation warring with the truth he'd known for months. I held my breath, praying he'd finally find his voice. Mom, he said quietly, you need to hear this. We've been trying to tell you for months, but you never listened. Taking strength from his support, I pulled out the papers. 3 years ago, when we started trying for a baby, nothing happened. After a year, we both got tested. Do you want to know what we found out, Linda? The room was so quiet you could hear the antique clock ticking in the hallway. Even Carol had lost her smirk, leaning forward with undisguised curiosity. Your perfect, fertile stock son, I continued, my voice gaining strength, has a condition called azoospermia. It means he produces no sperm, none, zero. We've been going through medical treatments, looking at options, dealing with this massive life challenge together, as a couple. While you've been busy buying me children's plates and making snide comments about my supposedly broken body. Linda's face had gone from red to white. The turkey platter wobbled dangerously in her hands. That's impossible, she stammered. The Matthews men have always been fertile? I finished for her. Well, here are the test results. Would you like to see them? The doctor explained it's a genetic condition, probably passed down through the maternal line. The turkey platter finally slipped from Linda's grasp. Michael jumped up to catch it, barely saving Thanksgiving dinner from ending up on his mother's expensive Persian rug. The loud clatter seemed to snap everyone out of their shocked silence. Oh my God, Mom, Emma spoke first, her voice full of horror. All these years you've been horrible to Sarah, and it was actually a genetic condition I passed to my son. Linda's voice was barely a whisper. She sank into her chair, her perfect hostess facade crumbling. Why didn't you tell me? We tried, Michael said, setting the turkey safely on the table. Remember last Christmas when we asked to speak to you privately? And at Emma's birthday in March? And when we stopped by in June? Every time you started attacking Sarah about not giving you grandchildren before we could explain. I have the dates written down, I added, pulling out a small notebook. Every time we tried to tell you, every dismissive comment, every gift of fertility tea or parenting books, every not-so-subtle jab. I wrote it all down. Would you like to hear what you said to me at Easter dinner? Tears were rolling down Linda's cheeks now, her carefully applied makeup leaving dark tracks on her face. The children watched wide-eyed as their indomitable grandmother crumbled before them. I need a moment, Linda pushed back from the table, nearly knocking over her chair in her haste to leave the room. The sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floors echoed through the silent house, followed by the slam of her bedroom door. Well, Carol said into the awkward silence, I suppose we should say grace. Tom's girlfriend let out a nervous giggle, which set off Emma's kids, and suddenly the tension broke. As Michael's father quietly went upstairs to check on Linda, I looked down at my pink plastic plate and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. 3 years of blame, shame, and accusations finally ended by one envelope of medical truth. The rest of Thanksgiving dinner passed in a blur of awkward small talk and half-hearted attempts at normalcy. Linda never came back downstairs. Her husband brought her a plate but returned looking grim and shaking his head when Carol tried to ask how she was doing. I picked at my food on the pink plastic plate, no longer feeling the sting of the intended insult. Michael kept his hand on my knee under the table, a silent gesture of support that meant more than any words could express. As people started making excuses to leave early, Emma pulled me aside in the kitchen while I was packing up my untouched pecan pie. I'm so sorry, Sarah, she whispered, glancing toward the stairs. All these years, I should have said something when Mom was being cruel to you. I never wanted to be on her bad side. I managed a small smile. I understand. Your mother can be intimidating. Still, Emma shook her head. What you've both been going through, the treatments, the disappointment, and Mom making it worse every step of the way. It must have been awful. Before I could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Linda appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen her. Sarah, her voice was hoarse. Could we talk, please? Emma squeezed my arm and slipped out, leaving me alone with my mother-in-law. Linda moved to the kitchen island, picking up the pink plate I'd left there. I bought this plate to hurt you, she said quietly, turning it in her hands. I spent weeks planning how to humiliate you at Thanksgiving, thinking I was defending my son's honor, his legacy. I never imagined, her voice broke, that you were actually hurting him too. I finished for her. She nodded, tears welling up again. All these years, my own son was suffering, and instead of being there for him, for both of you, I was making everything worse. I was so convinced I knew everything about my children. Michael wanted to tell you from the beginning, I said, surprising myself by wanting to ease her guilt. He just couldn't find the words. You've always seen him as this perfect son. And he didn't want to disappoint me. Linda set the plate down with shaking hands. Oh God, what kind of mother am I? Making my own child afraid to tell me about his pain. We stood in silence for a moment, years of hostility shifting into something different, not quite forgiveness, but perhaps understanding. The treatments, Linda finally said. Are they? We're exploring options, I explained. IVF with a sperm donor, possibly adoption. We're taking it one step at a time. Linda nodded slowly. Whatever you decide, whatever help you need. I know I have no right to ask for a place in your lives after how I've behaved, but if you let me, I'd like to be there, to support you both. Properly this time. Michael's voice came from the doorway, making us both jump. We like that, Mom, but things need to change. Linda turned to her son, and for the first time, I saw her really look at him, not as the perfect son she'd imagined, but as the real man he'd become. I know, sweetheart. They will. I promise. 2 months later, we sat in another doctor's office, this time with Linda beside us. She held my hand as the fertility specialist explained our options for IVF, asked intelligent questions about success rates, and didn't once mention the Matthews family legacy. When we left the clinic, she pulled out a small gift bag. I got you something. Well, got rid of something, really. Inside was the pink plastic plate, broken into pieces. "I'm having the Royal Dalton set divided between all my children," she said, "including you, Sarah. No more family heirlooms being held hostage for grandchildren. No more conditions on being part of this family." I felt Michael relax beside me, years of pressure lifting from his shoulders. "Thanks, Mom." That evening, as we got ready for bed, Michael paused by our fertility calendar. "You know what's funny? For years, I was terrified of disappointing my mother by telling her the truth. But now that it's out, now you can finally just be yourself," I finished, wrapping my arms around him. "Yeah," he smiled, looking more at peace than I'd seen him in years. All it took was one envelope and my brave wife standing up to the dragon. I thought about Linda, about how sometimes the strongest people are the ones who can admit they were wrong and truly change, about how families aren't built on perfect genetics or heirloom china, but on love, understanding, and forgiveness. "You know," I said, "your mom asked if we come over for Christmas dinner. Are you ready for that?" I smiled, thinking of the shattered pink plate. "Yeah, I think I am." Besides, she promised to serve everyone on paper plates this year. Said something about starting fresh, making new traditions. Michael laughed, and I joined him, the sound echoing through our home. A home that would someday be filled with children, one way or another, surrounded by family who had learned that love doesn't come with conditions, and healing can begin with a broken plate and an open heart.